Greetings everyone, welcome back to Blade Bias. It is finally time to talk about the Corvus, and I've already recorded this video once before, but it ended up being 20 minutes long, so I'm going to try not to yap for that long. But LDY cooked. You see it in the title, you see it in the thumbnail. LDY cooked on this one, and this is another great example of kind of why I think first impression videos can never be reviews, because my first impression video, I got a lot of things wrong about this that I no longer agree with. So we'll go over all of that, and we'll go over my week with the Corvus. Before we do that, I just want to make it very clear that LDY did send this out for free. I want to say for the purpose of a video, but they never clarified. I said, hey, thank you guys for the thing, and they were like, you're welcome, and that was like the entire interaction. So while I do believe that they sent this out with the expectation that it would be covered in a video, they never explicitly made that clear, so I just want to make that clear to you guys. Either way, treat my opinion as you would anyone else who gets a ballad song for free, regardless of what the purpose of getting it for free is. And I will be making a video in the coming days about, more my policy on how I treat free ballad songs and how all of that works, and maybe why you should take my opinions with a grain of salt. I know I've been promising that video for months, but it's actually coming, hopefully before Blade Show, but I can't make any promises on that. So, the Corvus. I initially said in my first impressions video that it was handle biased, more handle biased than the Sirius, in fact. I no longer agree with that. In fact, I didn't agree with that even like a day after I got the thing. It became pretty apparent to me that it wasn't handle biased, and I was just so used to the Seraph being so long and carrying momentum in a different way that this just felt weird. It didn't carry as much momentum. It carried like a different amount of momentum than the Seraph because it's shorter, which made me feel like it was handle bias, but in fact, it is just not. In fact, it's missing a little bit of handle weight, I would say. Not too much. It's probably similar to something like the Wing, where if you compare it to something that has end hardware, you'll probably notice it, but otherwise you might not. That being said, I think it does carry less momentum than the Wing. I think the Wing feels noticeably more handle bias, more momentum carrying than the Corvus. But to me, that's kind of one of the strengths of the Corvus. I know not everyone will be into that. I know there are people out there who really like their momentum, and I don't think this is bad by any means. I've certainly felt ballad songs that carry less momentum than this. But it's kind of one of the things that I love about it, because this thing fans unbelievably beautifully. I truly mean that. This might be one of the best fans that I have felt on a ballad song, period. And it's crazy saying that when I just got done praising the Seraph. But the thing with the Seraph is the Seraph fans so well without giving up any performance on other tricks. Whereas the Corvus does give up a little bit of performance on other tricks. Most notably, I've noticed Chaplains and Zero Gs. While not like bad, we're not talking like a vault here, it does leave a tiny bit to be desired, but it more than makes up for that in the fanning performance. Anything to do with fans, palm fans, normal fans, choker fans, reverse palm fans, if it has fan in the name, the Corvus is going to crush it. And it is one of the most satisfying ballad songs to fan. Not only because the balance, you're losing a little bit of that end weight, which means that things are pushed more towards the blade, which makes fans better, but also because of this chamfering, which makes the ballad song feel round without losing the control that you would lose on a round ballad song. I know a lot of people don't like round ballad songs because it's kind of tough to tell where you are on the ballad song, like ladders. If it's round, where am I grabbing? And then it rotates. And that's also kind of why I don't really prefer thinner rectangular handles, because it's just too easy for the ballad song to rotate this way when I don't want it to. But this provides the roundness that you would get from a round ballad song, without giving up the control. I think it's really, really excellent. The balance of chamfer to squareness here. And it's actually something that was pretty integral to the design that I did for the Create with Nibali's competition that didn't end up getting picked, but still something that I really wanted to see on a ballad song. So to see it is really nice. It's like the Sliff T on steroids, because the Sliff T I previously praised for having those chamfers that make it feel more round, but the Sliff T is definitely still a blocky boy. And this just doesn't feel like that. It feels round, genuinely round, without feeling too blocky, which means that choker fans specifically, like, you put no effort into it and it just goes and goes and goes, and all fans do that. 90% of the time when I'm flipping the Corvus, I'm fanning it because it just feels so damn good. But enough, babbling on about the fanning. What about all the other aspects of the balisong? I do have two notable complaints that aren't really the Corvus's fault and aren't even really things that I would be, too upset with. And I'm not too upset with, but just things that are negatives that I would want people to be aware of. One, it is a tiny bit sharp. It is a tiny bit uncomfortable. We're talking like the Pacific here. I know a lot of people think that the Pacific feels too much like sandpaper. They don't really like it too much. This is getting to that point. It's not necessarily Pacific level because this is vertical, so it doesn't interact with your hands in the same way that the Pacific did. But it is still there. It feels a little sharp. It feels a little rough. I personally believe that gives it grip that it desperately needs as an aluminum balisong. But if that's not something that you're into, maybe this wouldn't be your favorite thing in the world. Again, I don't think it's bad. I've felt sharper, more uncomfortable balisongs. Even the Baikal. Like, the Baikal has these channels that are genuinely, like, sharp to the touch. We're not talking sharp to the touch. We're just talking rough. We're talking they grip your hands a little bit too much. And some people might not be into that. It being aluminum, I'm super into that. I think it's great. Another thing that I would complain about, I know it's not really their fault because of how this blade is, but this tip points backwards, which means sometimes if you catch the balisong in a really weird way, the balisong will ricochet up and it will hit, and that tip will stab you even if it's behind, like, even if you're on the safe side. I had one notable example where I caught something a little weird, and normally I would just, like, let it happen and it would be fine. But the blade came back and it landed right there, and it actually got me. I think this might be the mark for it right here. It was a while ago, but even just it sitting there, you can see it got a little bit of skin. So, like, the blade will stab you from the back if you hit it just right. And that, while again, I'm not going to take any points off of it for that, is something to be aware of. Just because I don't really have that happening on other balisongs. Like, if we go with the Sliff T can hit you, and I'm not feeling the tip until, like, right there. But I've also never had that happen with the Sliff T, because while the Sliff T is pointing back, it doesn't point as back. And it also doesn't sit as far back as the Corvus does. The Corvus, the tip is actually the furthest thing over on the blade. If you were to put a straight edge here, the tip would be the first thing to touch, I believe. Whereas the Sliff T, the first thing to touch would be the spine right here. So that's a little bit, a little bit scary, something to be aware of when you're, when you're flipping the Corvus. Because I've definitely had issues where it just, boom. So, like, if I take the Sarah, for example, I'm not feeling the tip until, like, right there. That's when I start feeling the tip, kind of like a 40, not even, like a 60-degree angle up. Whereas the Corvus, I'm feeling it right there, like maybe a 30-degree angle. It definitely gets you. So that's something to be aware of. But other than that, like the possible sharpness, despite the sharpness, this thing is still machined really, really well. There's no sharp edges. It's just textured in a way that grips more than you would like. And that does mean that the chaplain's a tiny bit uncomfortable because of the texturing along the chamfers, but it's nothing bad at all. I think that's only going to manifest if you chaplain like a crap ton. It is by far not the most uncomfortable chaplain I've ever felt. The Superfly before Surge made the update, way more uncomfortable to me. This is just something like if you're going to chaplain for an hour straight, your finger's probably going to feel it. But other than that, the build of the Corvus, phenomenal. I think the jimping is great, even though I'm not the most confident with ladders on it because of how sharp it is. I get enough grip to do them. It's just, this is a skill issue. It's not because of the balisong, it's because I'm just not comfortable with ladders on this sharp of a live blade. But the jimping feels good. The texturing, pretty great in my opinion. I love this speed channel, the speed channel pattern. I think it provides enough grip above where, you know, most balisongs, that's flat right there. I think that's an interesting way to solve the grip problem here while not throwing off the balance too much, because it doesn't spread out the distribution as much as a normal speed channel would. I think the blade is great. 440C steel, which isn't the greatest for a live blade, but, you know, whatever. 7075 aluminum, 140, amazing. Bushings, great. I believe it weighs about like 4 ounces, 4.1 ounces, which, you know, that's exactly how it feels. I don't think it feels much lighter or heavier than that. And it just, I think it's a really great balisong. The blackened aluminum looks amazing. This teal that they went with looks amazing. The blackened blades that I've seen on this thing look incredible. I think the way to go with this thing is to get the blackened live blade, because then the silver of the hardware will contrast the silver that remains on the blade, and then the rest of it's black, and it's like, that's it. But even without that, I think this thing still looks really, really sick. I love it. And yeah, I think like my biggest objective complaint with it is that it's limited edition, that they only made 280 according to their website. I think that this thing would have been the perfect stepping ground between the Orion and the Sirius, because, you know, the Orion is the $70 to $80 budget flipper that, in all honesty, has not been touched in terms of value by anything else down there. And then you have the Sirius, which is more Kraken oriented, like 240-ish it's historically sat at. So this would have been the perfect little mid-step between the Orion and the Sirius, and I'm honestly really disappointed that it's not going to be permanent in their lineup. I think maybe they think it'll be too similar to Sirius because they're taking some aspects of this and implementing it into the next version of Sirius. Maybe they think the Orion is just can't be beat. I don't know what the reasoning is, but I would really like to see it become a mainstay because it would be the perfect little stepping point, perfect little midpoint in their lineup that I think they do need. And at its price point, while I do think that this is not Orion levels of value, because the Orion just, you can't touch it in $80. Like, no one has put anything out that even comes close to beating the Orion for $80 or less. Maybe the Canyon, but even still, if you could spend the money, I would say get the Orion. This thing, I think, definitely has competition in the Wing, in the Vault Pro, in the BB Firefly. Less competition now that the Prisma doesn't exist, because I do think, like, the Prisma, really solid competition to this, in my opinion. So this isn't that untouchable value that the Orion sits at, but I think it is very, very good value. Probably one of my favorites in the price point now that the Prisma's gone. Really, really solid. I really like the Corvus. LDY absolutely cooked with this thing. Fan's amazing. You do lose a little bit of performance in the rollover style tricks, but not too much that I'm going to complain about it too much. And yeah. Really quickly, the unboxing experience. I should have gone over this earlier. I'm sorry I didn't. Really sick. You get a genuine little hard case with this O-ring seal. I would feel comfortable putting any one of my other balisongs in there and using it as a single case. Sure, it might not be as useful as something like, okay, you got to take out, some balisongs you might have to take out this little lower layer of foam just to get a better fit. There you go. It's not as useful as something like Nibali's has with their 3 balisong system, but it's certainly more durable. It feels more solid. It's a really great unboxing experience. Comes with all the hardware that you would need to service it, and this screwdriver is probably my favorite small form factor screwdriver on the market. Comes with built-in bit storage. You can have T8, T10, T15 all right there, everything that you need. Fits in your pocket, fits in your case, gets enough torque to properly tighten down bushing balisongs. That's one of the biggest problems with these tiny little screwdrivers, is you just can't crank them enough to properly tune a bushing balisong. This thing, you get enough of that. It doesn't strip. I'll be honest, I've really only used it to tighten my serif because my serif's bite handle comes loose fairly often. But I haven't stripped it yet. It tightens it down perfectly fine and, you know, slides right into my pocket if I need it to. Really, really amazing small form factor screwdriver. I love it. The only thing I could think to complain about is it's plastic, so it might get some damage if you like turn it too much. But for right now, yeah, I mean, for a pack-in with this thing, I can't complain too much. So overall, Corvus rocks. Good job, LDY. Thank you again for sending me one, and thank all of you for watching. I know my opinions have changed on this drastically since the unboxing video, but that's how first impressions are. That's why you really can't review something 5 minutes after you take it out of the box, in my opinion. So, there we go. The Corvus, probably one of my new favorite $140 ballast songs. And that's about all. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Later.